Experience spine-tingling fear with this immersive ASMR horror story that takes you deep into the haunted wilderness of the Devil's Nest Trailhead. You're listening to ASMR 404 Found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. They call it the Devil's Nest out in rural Kentucky, not the entire forest, just one part of Eta. Stretch of winding path tucked behind a wall of pines, so thick you wouldn't know. There was a trail, unless you were looking for it, no signage, no fencing, just a rusted chain hanging limply between two stone posts. About 10 miles off a broken county road called Winslow Ridge. Locals say if the forest doesn't want you, you'll never find the path, but if it does, you won't be able to stay. A way I should have never gone. There was mid-October, 2023. The leaves were peaking, bright blood red, fire orange. Gold like a god had spilled it from a bowlie. Was out on a solo hiking tour, trying to record audio for a small ASMR podcast. I run whispers in the wild eye. No, not a big deal. Just some soft nature sounds, campfire cracks. My voice layered in at night, telling little backwoods ghost tales I'd heard from ranger blogs and old-timer side. Already gotten good material from Red River Gorge. But a guy at a bait shop told me I should check out a lesser-known area near Lewiston. Holler said it was perfect if I wanted untouched nature. When I asked if it had a name, he leaned in with tobacco breath and said, real low. Locals call it the Devil's Nest. He smirked, like it was a joke. But his eyes didn't smile. He warned me not to go past the pine wall. If I found it said hikers went missing sometimes, that their bodies weren't the problem, it was their faces. The expressions, they were frozen in mouths split open, like they'd been screaming for Dazai. Thought it was just a backwoods campfire storium. Not so sure anymore. It was a 2-hour drive from my motel. I left around 5 a.m. hoping to catch sunrise. Sound fog curled low over the holler, and the road cracked like it had been forgotten for decades. For decades. At one point I passed an old church, rotting sideways in the woods, with a steeple that looked snapped at the neck just beyond it. I found the stone posts, no trail marker, no warning sign, just cut the chain, and a faint path that looked more like a deer run than anything man-made. Still, I crossed it. Wanted raw ambience. What I got was something else entirely the second I passed the pines. Everything felt quieter, not peaceful, not syringeous. Wronged. The air wasn't still. It was waiting. Bird song stopped. No insects, no wind, just this heavy silence that felt like it was listening. Damned. Not in a warm way. The trail dipped almost immediately, leading me into a dense ravine choked with hanging moss and broken stone every few feet. There were little piles of carved twigs, always in threes, shaped like a triangle. I assumed they were just folk art, maybe some mountain ritual stuff left behind, but they weren't weathered. They were fresh. That should have been my first sign to turn round. I set up my mic rig on a mossy boulder, cracked open my thermos, and started recording. The first few minutes were clean, just distant creaks of old tree stems, Hollow thuds from deeper in the forest that I figured were branches falling, but then my headphones picked up something else, not breathing exactly, but a sort of low rasp, not animal, not wind, like something dragging across bark. I checked the area, called out, got no reply nor echo. Either sound just seemed to die as soon as I made it still. I kept recording. It wasn't until I reviewed the playback later that I heard Ita whisper right near the mic, clear as day. He's still in the trees. I didn't hear it with my ears when I was there, just in the recording. And it wasn't my voice. It wasn't even close. It was cracked and dry, like leaves being stepped, only packed up fast and started to head back. That's when I saw the rope. No, not a rope, a noose hanging from a limb just off the path, all frayed, swaying gently, even though the air was dead calm. There were claw marks around the tree base, like something had tried to climb up to it, tried to claw its way back down. Walked faster, didn't run, not yet, didn't want to spook anything if there was wildlife nearby. Then I heard Ita scream, far off, then closer, then impossibly close, right behind me. But when I turned, no one was there, only blackened bark like they'd been burned from the inside out. I sprinted, then didn't look back. I was close to the pine wall again when I noticed the ground. It had changed. My own boot prints, they were leading into the trail, not out like I'd never gone in the first place, like the forest had erased my presence. But I could see my truck parked just past the trees. It was still there, still really crossed the pines, and the air shifted instantly. Birds chirping, agile insects buzzing, whined in the branches. Sound of the world returned all at once. Channel had been unmuted. He left Kentucky that night, drove 15 straight hours back to Texas without stopping. But it didn't stay there, whatever that place is, whatever the devil's nest really holds. It followed me, and it's getting closer, because now, even when I record in my apartment, even when I test mics in padded rooms, even when I sit in total silence, the whisper comes back, the same words every time. He is still in the trees. I tried every trick in the book. Factory resets on my gear, wiped my laptop fresh, SD cards, even borrowed a mic from a friend just to test whether I was going crazier still. The same whisper, he's still in the trees. Sometimes the voice is louder, sometimes it sounds closer. I heard it behind my voice, layered into one of my podcast uploads that had already been published. Listeners commented on it, said the audio had a strange warmth to it, that it felt too real. One guy even said he could hear a breath behind mine, but only when he played it at half speed. Another DM'd me asking if I'd layered in the screams on purpose. That's when I knew it wasn't just me. Something had come back with me, and it was learning how to hide. I started having dreams, always the same O'Neum, standing on that trail again, except it stretches on forever. The trees rise up like walls on either side, and the sky is this pulsing red mist. No birds, no sun, just that noose swaying in slow, unnatural loops above. May never see what's behind me in the dream, but I feel it watching, breathing, waiting. Sometimes I wake up with pine needles in my sheets. Once I woke up choking on mousse. I coughed for nearly 10 minutes and threw it up in the sink. My throat was scraped raw, like barkai. Tried therapy, tried meds, nothing helped, and I got the second note, same handwriting as before, same shaky ballpoint pen folded and wedged under my door. You left the trail, but it didn't leave youth. That was all it said. No name, no signature. Just those words. Called every Forest Service office in Kentucky I could find, most didn't answer. One ranger told me he'd never heard of the devils. Nests said no such trail existed in the area but the last one. I called, she didn't say anything for a long time after I asked Ty. Thought the call had dropped. Then she said, real quiet, we lost people there. It's not marked for a reason. She hung up before I could ask more that same night. I got an email from a burner account. No subject, just a link to a private forum thread locked behind 3 password prompts. When I finally cracked it, it opened into a series of posts. Most had been deleted, but a few remained survivors' stories. Of them, about that trailhead, each account told a different version. But the patterns were the same: fresh twig triangles, voices. In the recordings, dreams of the new sand, something watching from the trees behind. User uploaded a blurry trail cam, photo black and white taken near the stone posts. You could barely make out the path, but just past the chain there was something, not a person, not an animal, tall and thin, 2 long limbs bent wrong. Its face was the worst part, not because it had one butt, because it looked like it was wearing one, like it had been peeled off and stretched on wrong. A human face draped over something inhumane. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, my apartment smelled like wet pine and my front door was open. Nothing was stolen, but something had been inside. I found a small pile of twigs on my nightstand, 3 of them triangle formation. Fresh break marks, still smelled of sap. That's when I knew I couldn't run from it anymore. Had to go back. Not for content, not for closure, just to try and end it. Maybe if I left something behind, maybe if I walked the trail to the end, maybe if I found him, he would let me go. Drove back to Kentucky 2 days. Latter didn't tell any, and didn't bring my recording gear, only packed a knife, water, and a thermal blanket. I wasn't planning on staying long, just enough to confront it all. Taken. I parked at the same spot near Winslow Ridge. The stone posts were still there. The chain was lower now, like something had dragged it down. The forest was even quieter this time, like it remembered May crossed the threshold. And I didn't come back out the same. The first hour passed in silence. No birds, no breeze, not even the sound of leaves crunching beneath my boots. Even though I could feel them crack and twist with each step, the forest here didn't echo it, absorbed like it fed on sound. I thought I remembered the way, but the trail had changed. The trees were closer together, now bent in ways that didn't look natural, like they had grown toward. Something in the center of awe had been pulled inward. The carved twig triangles appeared again every 20 or 30 feet, tied with hair, human, hairy. Few were fresh enough that the sap still oozed from the ends. That meant someone else had been hero. Something had made them. Recently, around mile 2 by, saw the first sign of what this place really was, boot-caked in mud and dried blood. Lying sideways at the base of a triad. Wasn't old, the sole was clean enough to read the brand inside, was a foot still. Wearing a sock still warm, I turned to leave, but the trail was gone, no. Fork, no. Side path, no. Side path, no. Sign of my print behind me, just a wall of trees. And the path leading deeper, I told myself it was fear that I'd spun around too fast and gotten disoriented. But the truth is, the trail changes when you look away. It doesn't let you leave, not until it's ready, so I pressed on more bones as I walked, some clean, some picked dry, but still twitching past a tree with a face carved into Ithaman-like eyes, hollowed out, mouth stretched in an eternal scream. The sap oozed red from the eyes, too red like blood. That S when the sound started again, not the whisper. This time, something different. Crying, child's cry. Coming from somewhere off the trail, far enough that I couldn't see, but close enough that I could feel it tanned. It wasn't just one voice, it was layered, a chorus of different sobs, echoing through the branches, bouncing off each other, each one sounding more desperate than the last. I knew I shouldn't follow it, but I did, because something in that sound grabbed the back of my spine and tugged the same way you feel when someone calls your name across a crowded room and you know it's meant for you. It led me to a clearing, circular, perfectly symmetrical dead grass. In the middle, burned out in a shape I can't even describe, not a pentagram, something older, something primal. In the center was a figure, not moving, not breathing, not breathing, not breathing. It looked human at first, but I saw its body was wrong, limbs to lungs, pale fingernails like bark. It turned toward my hand. It had my face, not just similar. It was mine, down to the scar under my eye and the broken capillary in my left cheek. But the eyes were black, not dark, not brown, black, bottomless, like looking into a hole. Bin the world. It opened its mouth and screamed, but there was no sound, just a vibration in the air. So deep it rattled my bones. I fell to my knees, hands over my ears, eyes shut tight when I opened them. It was gone, the clearing empty again, but now the trees had shifted behind me, formed a tunnel, narrow and dark, lined with rope, dozens of nooses all swaying. In sync, there were faces in them, blotted, grinning. Their eyes followed me as I moved, and then I saw something worse. One of them wasn't a corpse, it was a living man, thin, emaciated, but still breathing, barely. His mouth opened and closed, like he was trying to bespeak, but couldn't. His hands were bound in front of him, nails missing, skin torn, etched into his chest with the same twig, triangle symbols, hundreds of them, all carved by hand. He looked right at me and mouthed one word, run, but I couldn't net because I was frozen, because my feet were already walking forward on their own. I wasn't in control anymore. The trail had taken that to it, led me deeper through fog and ash, through bones and hair. At one point I passed a mirror nailed to a tree. Didn't see Myself in it, just him, the thing, with my face grinning wide behind. Meek when I turned. There was nothing there, only the sound of dragging footsteps behind me matching mine pausing. When I paused breathing, when I breathed, he was inside my rhythm now. I screamed, nothing came out. Haven, my voice had been taken that. When I realized what the trail really was, it wasn't a place, it was a ritually path that reshaped you as you walked it broke. You rebuilt you until the only thing left was him, whoever he was, whoever he used to be. He needed faces, he needed bodies, he needed stories to tell through other mouths, and mine was next. But I fought one last time. I reached into my pocket, pulled the knife, drove it into my thigh, deep enough to break whatever trance I was in. The pain snapped something loose. I fell sideways off the trailhead to brambles and thorns, everything around me screamed. The trees, the nooses, the bones, they screamed in anger, but I crawled hand over hand. Bleed. I saw it there, chained the stone posts. They shimmered like a mirage through the trees. I pushed toward it every step, heavier than the last, like the forest was pulling me back. But I crossed, fell into the dirt, past the chain, and the air rushed back. Wind, birds and sex, smells, color, life. I passed out cold when I woke. It was dark. My truck was still there. Had no idea how long I'd been gone. No messages, no missed calls, no time passed on my phone, like the world had waited for me to return. I drove straight home, again didn't look back, didn't stop, didn't speak for days. But here's the worst part, the true horror. Last night I found a photo on my phone, one I didn't take. It's a selfie, me smiling, standing on that trail, but I'm not holding the camera, and in the reflection of my eyes I can see him still grinning, still wearing my face. He's out now, and I think he's looking for someone else to wear next. If you ever find yourself driving through southeastern Tennessee, through the backcountry stretches near the Georgia border, and a road sign says Black Hollow Recreation Area, don't pull over, don't check your GPS stand. Listen to that little voice that says, what if there's something beautiful just off the path? Because Black Hollow is not a place that lets people leave the same way they came in. If they leave at alley, didn't go there to tempt fate. I went there to forget. I was 3 months out of a broken engagement, 5 years into a dead-end job, and most nights I drank cheap whiskey while listening to forest sound loops through my headphones just to fall asleep. There was something about the woods that gave me peace, not the camping kind of peace, not marshmallows or campfire songs. I mean the kind where everything goes quiet and you can hear your own breath and nothing else. So I rented a cabin on a weekend deal just north of Ocoee Lake, real close to Cherokee National Forest. They said the area was underused, no cell towers, no amenities. For isolation. That's what I wanted, just me, a notepad, and my little mic rig so I could maybe record some natural ambience for my ASMR channel. Nothing fancy, just quiet rustling leaves and flowing creeks, and maybe some faint bird song to help other people sleep the way I needed to. The cabin was fine one. Room creaky, floor rusted old stove in the corner, and windows so warped you couldn't tell if the glass was dirty or just old, but it had heat and a roof and just enough coffee in the cupboard to get me through the mornings. It was the ranger map that caught my eye pinned crooked on the wall above the kitchen. Sink hand-drawn yellowed paper. Most of the trails marked in red ink had names I recognized from nearby parts, but one path, real thin, curling into the southern edge of the woods, was labeled only with a name I'd never seen before. Black, hollow no, trail, length, no, topography, lines, just a crooked arrow and a set of coordinates scrawled in tiny numbers underneath. I almost ignored. IT almost went fishing like I planned. But you know how curiosity works, especially when the woods are whispering just quiet enough to make you wonder if they're saying something to you. And no one else, so I set out the next morning with my pack. Buy a little thermos of warm coffee, my recorder, and a dumb confidence of someone who thinks the scariest thing they'll face on a trail is a snake or a bear. The first hour was fine sunlight, slipped through the canopy in slow drip spurts, called from somewhere too high to see, found an old wooden marker covered in moss that confirmed I was on the right path. A single board nailed into a pine tree, carved with the words Black Hollow Trailhead. The air was colder than it should have been even. For early fall the wind came through in slow, heavy waves, not constant, just enough to make the leaves hiss once in a while, not like wind, like breathing. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No birds, now no bugs, just my own boots on the dirt. Even that sound began to fade. The trees grew thicker, leaned inward, like their trunks had shifted toward the trail after years of watching. And then I saw the first symbolized pattern of sticks left in the dirt beside the trail. 5 of them snapped at precise angles, arranged in a pattern that felt too deliberate to be random. First glance, it looked like a star, but not the kind you'd see on a flag or in a cartoon. This one was broken at the tip, spent wrong, like it had been drawn by someone trying to remember what stars used to look like before they forgot how light worked. Ty stepped over it, careful not to touch further down the trail. I saw more of them hung from branches carved into bark, few strung with animal bones, and old thread. One had something else tangled in its something human, a clump of hair, tied in a tight knot, dark brown, still glossy, like it hadn't been there long. I told myself it was a prank, some weird Appalachian folk art left behind by kids trying to freak people out. It wasn't until I saw the footprints that I felt real fear. They were barefoot, small, too small, child-sized, maybe 7 or 8 years old, but spaced too far apart for a child's stride. They were deep, sunken, pressed like the weight had come down in single bursts. Not steps. I crouched low, looked close, no sign of toes or skin, just pure pressure. Like something had landed, then vanished, turned, to go back only. I couldn't best. The trail had changed. The branches behind me looked the same, but the path was gone. The moss was untouched. No prints, no break in the leaves, like I had never walked that way at all. And Then I saw the tree. It was massive, older than anything I'd seen in the forest. Its bark split wide in the shape of a mouth, no exaggeration. It looked like a screaming mouth, frozen open, and inside that bark mouth there was a face. Just for a moment I saw it peeking, politely smiling, and gun-eye stumbled backward. Nearly dropped my mic. It wasn't until I looked through the waveform display later that I saw what had been recorded underneath the ambient noise right around the timestamp. When I saw the fuss, a whispered, drawn out, slow, too close to the mic to be from the woods. It said, "You were always going to return." The wind changed when I heard the whisper. It was sharp, not loud, but cutting, like it slid beneath the skin of the forest, and into me. I stood still for a long time. I don't know how long. The seconds felt stretched, like the trail had pressed pause on the world. The trees didn't move, the leaves didn't rustle, everything had stopped except the beat of my heart, and it was pounding. I didn't run, not because I wasn't scared, because I didn't know where to run. Every direction looked the same. Now even the light above was different, Palagrea like. The sun was being filtered through something that wasn't. The sky kept moving forward, or what I thought was worker. Symbols on the trees changed. No more star patterns. Now it was circles, thin, bend, shaky, carved low near the roots. Some of them had things inside, teeth, glass, shards, a baby's sock. There were too many for it to be round much. One was like a doorway, but only part open, only enough to let some of whatever was inside peek out. I started hearing breathing, not mind, not near me, but around. MIT didn't match the rhythm of my steps, didn't even sound human, too deep, too moist, like lungs that had been buried too long. I whispered just to hear my own voice, to anchor myself, to prove I was real. My recorder caught it all, and layered beneath my own whisper was another one, a second voice, repeating what I said, but half a second too late, like it was learning, like it was practicing, mimicking my cadence, testing my breath. I found a cabin in the clearing, not the kind someone just left behind. This one was waiting. It looked newer than the trail, but still wrong. Its windows were covered in a greasy film, and the porch slanted down like it had grown out of the dirt. Instead of being built, there was no path to it, no overgrowth around it, just that hollow space where trees wouldn't grow. Told myself not to open the door, but I did. It wasn't locked, it wasn't even fully shut. Inside was colder than outside, colder that it should have been. Dust floated like underwater debris, slow and heavy. There was a Beda wooden chair and a mirror hanging crooked on the far wall. No dust on the mirror, polished cleaners. If someone had just touched E.T., stepped toward it, and the reflection didn't match my movement. My arms stayed down, my mouth didn't move, but the thing in the mirror smiled. It was me, but older, and the smile kept growing wider, too wide, like the face was being peeled from underneath, turned away on. That's when I saw the chariot wasn't empty now. There was someone sitting, and back turned to me, still completely still. Didn't hear them enter, didn't see them appear, but they were there, gray hair, long stringy tangled with what looked like pine needles. They didn't move even. When I whispered Devon, when I said I was sorry, tried the door again, it was stuck, like the cabin had changed behind meal, like it wanted me inside. That's when the person in the chair finally spoke. Her voice was dry, crumbling like leaves being crushed under slow hands. She said, "The trees remember what was taken the land. They remember why I closed my eyes when I opened them." She was gone. The chair was empty. Again the mirror was cracked hand. My reflection was gone from it completely. Left or tried toy. Don't remember the door opening, only that I was outside. Again, and the trail behind me was burning, not with fire but light, soft golden light that pulsed like it had veins moving. Through the dirt, through the roots, through the bones, because there were bones. Now laid out in patterns, ribs, woven into dremket, nailed into trees like totems, all of it arranged in a design too large to see from the ground, too precise to be madness. Kept walking. The forest didn't stop me. It watched. I could feel it in the pressure of the branches, the hush of the wind, like something big was circling close enough to touch, but polite enough to wait for. Now I passed a woman's shoehof, buried in soft mud, bright blue, like it hadn't been here long. Next to it was a voice recorder, almost the same model as Minnie. Picked it up and pressed play. Static, then whispers, then screaming, then my voice saying something. I don't remember saying the forest is inside now. I let it in. I let it grow. Dropped it, didn't look back, didn't check my compass because the needle was spinning. My phone was dead. I followed the path until I reached a new marker, eye-stone, slab carved with a name, Nathaniel Clark, 1891. Below that he fed the hollow. The hollow fed him. The air around the stone felt different. Not cold, just thinner, like it was hard to breathe. Like I was too far above sea level. But we weren't on a mountain. Then I saw the well covered in ivy, half buried near the base of a tree. No rope, no bucket, just the hole open and darkened. I heard something from inside, not a growl, not a whisper, a laugh, low, dry, shaking. It was my laugh, but stretched, strong, and coming from something below. I couldn't move for a long time. The well didn't make a sound again, but it didn't need to. Silence said more than any voice could. It was heavy. It clung to my ribs, filled my throat like smoke. Hand. I understood in that moment the trail wasn't showing me things. It was remembering them, playing them back, not for me but through me. Stepped away from the well. Each movement felt watched, like invisible fingers hovered just inches from my skin, testing the air, waiting for a reason to pull, to grip, to drag. I told myself I had to keep moving. So I did, but the forest wasn't the same. The trees grew taller, thinner, and their bark had changed. No longer just rough now. It looked like skin, dry, split veins. Some of them had eyes, not metaphorical ones, actual open sockets carved into the wood, dark and moist, blinking. Slowly each blink echoed like a drumbeat in my chest, and each one focused on me, not watching, recognizing mine. Saw symbols carved into the ground, now circles nested inside triangles. Some filled with teeth, some pulsing faintly with what looked like light, but it wasn't light. It was memory, it was history, The forest wasn't just alive, it was conscious. It remembered every footstep, every cry, every trespass, every sacrifice. It remembered names no longer spoken. It wanted me to remember Toei past, an old wooden sign tilted sideways, its letters nearly worn away by moss and time, but I could still make them out. Return what was borrowed underneath, etched in smaller letters, or stay and feed the roots. That, when it hit May, had been here before, not in this life, not with this name, but I had been here. That's what the whisper meant too. Were always going to return. The forest wasn't luring strangers, Boz calling back its own people who took from it, who broke its rules, who left without paying the toll, and I was one of them. I didn't know what I took, but I knew what it wanted back, my voice, my story, my shape. I kept walking because I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped, and the forest knew that. It showed me more scattered along the trail were belongings, a necklace, a cracked phone, hiking boot still tied at the ankle itch, one with initials burned into a piece of bark beside them like grave markers. One of them had my initials freshly carved, still smoking at the edges. I reached a clearing near dusk. The sky above was the color of old blood. The clouds didn't move. They hovered like they were afraid to touch the air below. In the center of the clearing was a stone circle, broken, jagged, pulsed like a heartbeat, and I heard something inside. It whispers again, not in English, not in words, but I understood them anyway because they were in my voice, my mind, as if the trees were flipping through memories, like pages in a book, and now they were reading mine out loud. The heartbreak, the failure, the night I thought about ending everything, the things I almost did, the things I still might do, all of it spoken back to me in soft, rustling tones, and I saw them standing in the trees, figures, too tall, too still, faces draped with moss, arms hanging too low, watching, not moving but swaying slightly in sync with the trees, as if the forest had given them life and forgotten to finish the job. They didn't step forward. They didn't need to be, 'cause I knew they were waiting for me to step in to complete something I turned, and the trail was gone again, just trias thicken, moving, rooted in memory. And that's when I saw the child sitting alone at the edge of the clearing, face down, arms wrapped around her knees, wearing a coat too big for her. The same coat I wore in a photo from when I was 6 years old, the one my father had taken before the fire. I walked toward her slowly, carefully. She didn't look up, but she spoke. "You left me here." Her voice wasn't angry, was broken, empty, like the hollow itself. I said I didn't remember. She said I was lit, and then she looked up, and she had my face, not just similar. It was mine exactly, down to the scar above the eyebrow, but young and hurt me. For the years had made me forget, backed away, but my feet didn't listen. The clearing pulled me inward. The trees swayed harder. The ground hummed beneath me, and I realized Black Hollow wasn't a place you return to when you've denied your own past. To languor, reckoning, mirror grown in soil and bark and blood. I took one last breath and stepped into the stone circled. The air collapsed around me. Time, folded voices filled my ears. screaming, crying, begging then. Silence drew, silence like the forest had inhaled and never exhaled. A Gaia woke up back in the cabin same. Creaky floors, same broken window, same map on the wall only. This time, the trail wasn't marked. The red ink had been scratched away, but I remembered because I could still feel dirt under my fingernails. And a new whisper in my head, soft, slow, insistent, feed the hollow, or be fed to it.